History.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I'll put on the record to start that this is one of the few occasions I thank Senator Mark for the opportunity to provide the country with a truthful explanation as to why NGC, unfortunately, suffered this historical loss this year. Madam President, the population would have heard me say before that one of the first tasks that I was asked to perform in 2015 was to go and renegotiate the only energy deal the UNC government put together in 2010 to 2015. A disaster of a deal, not only for the energy sector of Trinidad and Tobago, but in fact for the NGC. That required me to go to Japan on a 2-day trip and to fortunately renegotiate certain terms where the UNC government, in the only energy deal they had ever negotiated between 2010 and 2015, the disaster that it was, did, amongst other things, made a promise to give gas that didn't exist to a new, untested plant instead of all of the Point Lisas estate that existed with their long-term gas contracts at the time. And that is the context for the background of the loss that unfortunately NGC has to book. Madam President, the NGC group recorded a loss of $2.1 billion for the financial year ended December 31st, 2020, which represented a $2.6 billion change from their restated profit of $0.5 billion for the financial year ended December 31st, 2019. The performance for 2020 was adversely impacted by exceptional charges of $4.2 billion, resulting from the following, Madam President. 1, onerous contracts entered into, the only contract entered into and negotiated by a failed UNC energy policy government that had no clue then, and unfortunately from what I've just listened to that was prepared for Senator Mark, because I know Senator Mark wouldn't have read what he just read if it wasn't prepared for him in the energy sector. It just shows the complete lack of understanding by the previous UNC government. The onerous contract of $2.1 billion, a charge of $2.1 billion was recorded in 2020 by NGC for a gas supply contract in which the cost of fulfilling the contract in the future is greater than the returns to be derived. So when we listen to what the UNC claims they know about the energy industry, the reality is they negotiated a disastrous contract for the country and for NGC that is going to lead to NGC losing $4.5 billion. The only gas contract that the UNC negotiated between 2010 and 2015 has led to a loss of $4.5 billion for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So let's start there. So NGC had to book that loss in accordance with new accounting standards. Added to that, in accordance with accounting standards, is an impairment of infrastructure of $1.6 billion. Added to that is the settlement of certain claims, again flowing out of the disaster that was 2010 to 2015 under a UNC failed administration that decimated the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago of $500 million. So these three things are the result of what happened, unfortunately, in that period of time and led to NGC having to restate and now book a loss. Just to very quickly return to some of the points made by Senator Mark, and I accept he did not prepare what he just read. He starts off again by complete misinformation, saying that NGC has put forward $300 million for a life extension of Train 1. This comes from a UNC government where, unfortunately, the leader stood up in a budget debate and had no clue what the country's shareholding is in Atlantic LNG. So once again, I understand why they are clueless in the energy sector, making the type of remarks they've just made. No clue as to the shareholding in Atlantic. This government, Madam President, I assure the population of Trinidad and Tobago, we're currently negotiating with the sophisticated shareholders of Atlantic and renegotiating a restructured Atlantic LNG going forward into the future. And NGC did not expend any $300 million towards any life continuation, a life extension. Also to say and to come back to this suggestion that it has anything to do with negotiations in Houston, we've said time and time again, the Prime Minister facilitated conversations. The price of gas from upstreamers has gone up. If the UNC had done what they should have done, which is what we are doing now, negotiating new gas contracts before their expiry, the country may not have found itself in that position. I'd also like, through you, Madam President, to put on the record that the contracts that were entered into coming out of Houston discussions in 2017 were all renegotiated with the Shell, the BP, and the EOG in more favorable terms to NGC because, of course, it is a cyclical nature. It is a commodity that is cyclical nature. And if I can just, through you, Madam President, tell the country today, the natural gas prices, Henry Hub, $3.68. At the time, it was lower. JKM, which is the Asian market, $14.31. NBP, which is the British market, $12.86. I quote those things, Madam President, to show the cyclical nature, because unlike and despite the attempts by the UNC to say Point Lisa has failed, the reason why you're not hearing any of the ammonia and methanol producers today bawling and screaming is because the prices of ammonia now are between $500, $600 a metric ton, and the price of methanol well over $350. So let the country understand that when the commodity prices are high, you hear no complaints. You hear no complaints because all of them are busy making money. But when the prices are low, as happened at the outset of COVID, when global production and global manufacturing was down, that is when people close down plants to do turnovers. People close down plants for other strategic reasons. So population, do not be concerned. We will continue to work with the NGC and work to keep our oil and gas sector very alive, because it is only under PNM administrations have oil and gas sectors been born and grown in Trinidad and Tobago. Every time the UNC has been in power, they have decimated the energy sector and left us burdened with unfavorable contracts, and they will continue to do so because they are clueless about the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago and globally. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Honourable Senator.